All right, folks, chapter 17, credit records and laws. We're going to look at establishing good credit and evaluating credit and laws. So you want to think about the purpose of credit records, the concept of credit worthiness, and then how to get started using credit is what we're going to look at. So before you get credit, a creditor will check into your past performance. So they're going to ask questions like, did you pay your bills on time? How much total credit did you receive in the past? How much do you owe? How large are your payments? Because you think about it, if you were going to loan somebody money, you want to ensure that they would be able to pay you back. Otherwise, it's basically just giving somebody money and crossing your fingers that you'll ever get it back. And credit companies don't make money that way. They make money by giving you money, knowing you'll pay it back and with interest. So if you've got all these huge amount of bills, if you have a history of not paying your bills on time, et cetera, you may not be a good candidate to receive credit. So that's your credit history, essentially. It's the complete record of your borrowing and repayment performance. So this provides answers to these questions, and it helps creditors to see if you're a good candidate or not for new debt. Every person who uses credit has a credit history on file at a credit bureau. And that's a business that basically gathers, stores, and then sells credit information to other businesses. So a credit bureau has all of the information about you and your financial history and your credit history, and then it collects it into a big database and then sells that information. There are three major credit bureaus, TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. And a credit report is a statement of your credit history, and it's issued by a credit bureau to businesses. And you can actually get a copy of the credit report at the credit bureau's website or by writing to the bureau. And if you're denied credit, you can get a free credit report within 30 days of being denied. And it's important to know your credit history and credit report. There are different services that are available, credit guard services and credit freezing services. Credit bureaus, they gather information from businesses, and they're called subscribers. They pay a monthly fee for access to this information. And each subscriber supplies information about its accounts with customers. So that would include your name, your address, credit balances, and all that. And they gather information from a lot of other sources too, to give a picture of sort of your credit worthiness. And when someone applies to a business for credit, they ask the credit bureau, the business asks the credit bureau for your credit report. So let's say you go to Capital One, which is like a credit lender, and you apply for a credit card. They will ask the credit bureau for your credit report, and then it's used to decide if they want to grant or deny credit to you. There's a lot of different type of information that's stored in your credit report and your credit record. So that would be things like failing to pay your property taxes, if you filed for divorce or bankruptcy, major life moments like marriage, birth of a child, job promotions, being involved in a lawsuit. So a lot of your information is there in that credit record. And before potential creditors are going to give you credit, they want to check on your credit worthiness. And a person who's considered credit worthy usually meets the 5 basic qualifications, or 5 C's. That's character, capacity, capital, conditions, and collateral. So character is the first C. Character is essentially, are you responsible? In the past, have you paid your credit on time? Have you paid your bills on time, etc.? So if you've been stable in paying bills on time and honoring agreements in the past, then you would be considered sort of in good standing with your character. Capacity is the financial ability to repay a loan with your present income. So before they lend you money, they want to see, do you have the capacity to actually pay that loan back based on your current financial situation? Capital is, do you have sufficient assets to support the debt? So they want to look at your bank accounts, your investments, your property to decide, is your net worth higher than the amount of debt that you're accruing? And we talked about how you get net worth in the past, but you add up your assets, you subtract your liabilities, and that gives you the net worth or your capital. So if If your net worth is high enough to pay off the debt, then you kind of meet the other criteria. Conditions would be things that are like external conditions that affect your ability to repay. So they want to know, is your job secure? How secure is the company you work for? Is your employment situation good? Is it risky? Is it stable, etc.? And the last C is collateral, which we've talked about before. So do you have property or other assets that if you were unable to pay back the loan, the credit company or the business that's looking at the credit report would have some way of seizing something of value from you to make up for you lacking to pay off that loan. Looking at getting started with credit, you want to start with a savings account, open a checking account, maybe open a store credit account is a good way to start. So maybe, at a store that you like, maybe like, I don't know, you go to a department store or something, open an account there. That's a good place to start. Typically, when you're first getting credit, you're going to have a cosigner. So that would be like a parent or a relative or somebody who agrees to pay if you fail to pay. You want to start with maybe getting a small loan for something and applying for a credit card. These are all basic ways to get started with credit. Okay, we're going to look quickly at evaluating credit and laws. So we're looking at credit ratings, credit report, and then major credit laws. So credit bureaus, we talked about those major three that exist. They value each consumer based on your credit history, the amount of credit, and your ability to take on additional debt. And there are two major classifications that are used, your credit rating and your credit score. Your credit rating is basically a measure of how credit worthy you are. And this process rates you according to how reliably you pay back what you've borrowed or charged in the past. So you can have, there's a range of 4, from excellent to poor. There's excellent, good, fair, and then poor credit rating. So obviously you want to shoot to have good or, if possible, excellent credit. And then your credit score is a point system, a more specific point system within those larger 4 categories. So they assign points based on how much current debt you have, how many late payments you've had in the past, the number of your open accounts and the types of them, your current job, the amount of income you have. And when those points are added up, that gives you your credit score, and it tells potential creditors how likely you are to repay the debt. The higher the score, the better candidate you are for credit. Your credit score would be your FICO score. We'll talk about your FICO score, how errors are made, credit inquiries, and improving your FICO score are all things that you can look more in the book. Credit reports are updated all the time. So credits, your information will stay on file for 7 years. So like if 6 years ago you failed to pay off a debt, it'll stay there for 1 more year, and then once 7 years hits, that part will be sort of archived. Credit reports are requested for usually credit applications or employment applications or insurance reasons. The formats are different depending on the different reports, but typically they contain a summary of information, public record, credit information, your account details, requests for credit history, and then personal information. Some credit laws. The Consumer Credit Protection Act, also known as the Truth in Lending Act, it requires lenders to fully inform consumers about all costs of a credit purchase before an agreement is signed. So if you are applying for a credit card or some kind of credit loan, you have to be told exactly the terms of the agreement. And then there's something called the Fair Credit Reporting Act, gives you the right to know what's in your file and who has seen your file. So those are important things. Continued, the Fair Credit Billing Act requires creditors to resolve billing errors within a specific period of time. So if there was an error in the way that you were charged, credit companies have to address that. The Equal Credit Opportunity Act is designed to prevent discrimination, treating people differently based on prejudice rather than individual merit. So the Equal Credit Opportunity Act basically ensures that people are offered credit not based on anything other than their ability to pay it back. And then lastly, there's the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, was designed to eliminate abusive collection practices by debt collectors. And a debt collector is a person or company hired by a creditor to collect the overdue balance on an account. And that's it. So that's it for Chapter 17 on credit.